I'm Sean Smith. This is Sean Smith Photos, where I edit street photography and occasional travel photos with On1 Photo Raw. Welcome to the channel. So I went on a photo walk this past weekend through the financial district here in Toronto, and we were wandering around and found this giant head sculpture, and I took the shot. Actually, I took several shots, different angles, and this man that you can see down here just in front. In all of the other shots, I was a little bit further away and it was hard to see, and I decided that this is the shot that I liked. And coincidentally, once I looked on the computer just by chance, the back of this chair lined up perfectly with the nape of the neck. And so I've decided to edit this photo. Now, I went through and I recorded a whole video about this edit, which you can see the final shot over here. And what happened is I had accidentally hit the mute button on my microphone and didn't save any of the audio. So I'm going to walk through and recreate the edit. What I've done here is I created a version in On1 Photo Raw and reset everything that I had done over here. So I'm going to go through my whole process again. It might look slightly different because I'm not going to be referring to exact settings and things like that, but let's go through and do this edit. So as usual, the first thing that I do is I hop into develop, and we'll go into noise and sharpening and hit no noise AI. Hit the fit button so we can see the whole thing, and you can see that no noise AI does a really good job on this. So we're going to hit apply. And then we'll go back into develop, tone and color, and we'll try out AI match, really dark, AI auto, pretty bright. Let's go back to manual and check the camera profiles. So, mouse is a little bit laggy. What's going on? On1 landscape, portrait, vivid, neutral, camera portrait, camera standard, camera vivid. Yeah, I like the landscape, and the portrait's a little too bright and flat. So I think I'm just going to go with the landscape one. And let's try the auto ones again. AI match, way too dark. AI auto. All right, that's way too bright, but I think this can be a good starting point for us. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to pull back on these midtones. My mouse is all laggy today. Pull back on the midtones, pull back on the shadows a bit. And we want the contrast up, and we're going to drop down the haze, and we can see pulling back on the haze slider brings in more detail and contrast on the sculpture. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's increase the structure. All right, so yeah, I think that's a pretty good start for develop. Next, we will crop it because this is photo's a little bit busy, and I think using a portrait view would be great. So we'll go up here where the ratio is, keep it original, and just hit this button to swap the values. And now we've got a vertical crop. And I'm going to move it in like this so it's nice and centered. And hit enter and save. There we go. So we've cropped this in. Let's go into the effects module and we'll add a dynamic contrast. And let's hit natural. That looks okay. Surreal looks, I like what Surreal has done to the sculpture, but I'm not so happy with what it's doing to the glass here. It's kind of getting a little bit crunchy on the building. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask this. And let's try the AI mask. And so we're in drop mode. Basically, I'm just going to draw a line around everything that I don't want. So we want everything outside of the sculpture, and let's just kind of hit this up a couple of times, different spots, just to make sure it understands what we want. And we'll go back here and we'll set to keep, and we'll draw in a green line on this sculpture, which we want nice and masked out. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit because the first time I did this, this back area of the sculpture did not get included in the mask, and I spent a fair amount of time using the brush tool to get it. So I'm just going to draw it in this time so that On1 understands that I want this shadowed part of the mask included. And let's drop and really, whoops, I said drop really close into the edge of the mask. We'll draw another red line saying we don't want this. Move this up. And just draw along here. Oops. Undo that. Ah, there we go. And let's add another keep and just get really close in there. Oh. My mouse is all laggy. All right, so hit the fit button. We can see that we've just drawn this green line around what we want to keep and the red for what we don't want to keep. And we'll hit apply and see how it does with them. Wow, it did a great job. Little bit here that I got to clean up, but yeah, I'm happy with this. So let's hit done. And that will save the mask. Control M will view our mask. And we will zoom in. And it's basically just right along here that we need to clean up. So let's try go to the mask tool. Let's try the perfect brush. Oops, perfect brush here. And we want to paint out. So I'll hold down the Alt key to switch to paint out. And keep the crosshairs on the black. And it does a nice job of that. And here we'll keep the crosshairs in the gray, just to pull into that line a little bit. And let's zoom up here. Yeah, we need to make this brush a little bit smaller, zoom in a little bit more. And look at that. Perfect Brush is doing a nice job of cleaning that up for us. And yeah, I could use the refine tools, but I find that doing it like this sometimes is a little bit faster or simpler than using the refine brush, because this was a little bit more over the edge than what refine brush could do nicely. Okay, so let's hit fit and see how the rest of the mask looks. And we'll change the mask view mode to grayscale, and we can really see it. And turn off that. We do not need, whoops, do not need all this stuff down here. So we'll just paint out. And oops, forgot to hold down the Alt key, paint out there, and we're happy with that. Okay, Control M, turn it off. And we'll turn off the dynamic contrast, and we can see that there's a lot more detail and contrast in the sculpture here. Let's copy this mask, and I do want more contrast in the building, but not as much as we were getting with the heavy settings. So let's grab another dynamic contrast filter, and we'll paste our mask and invert it. So now the mask is adding dynamic contrast everywhere except the sculpture. And we're going to use natural. And let's turn that on and off. And we can see that it's brightened up and added contrast in the building here. So yeah, that's pretty good. And next, we got this guy with a dark jacket, dark skin, and he's hiding against the darker background. So we need to somehow pull him out so he's a little bit more visible in the photo. And we'll do that with a tone enhancer filter. I'm going to add the tone enhancer, and I'm going to make the shadows lighter option. And that did a pretty good job. But we really only want it around him. So we're going to mask this, and we'll use the masking bug, and we'll set that to vignette and drop it here and resize like this. And let's make that just a little bit taller, rotate it a little bit so it's along the line of his legs. Yeah. All right, and invert. So now we're enhancing everything just in this spot here. So let's up the exposure just a titch, maybe 0.2. Yeah, 0.25, that's good. I'm going to up our shadows to 100. Oh, up the shadows to 100. Let's take a look at the curves. Let's up that like that, and then we'll keep the highlights like that, and up the shadows just a little bit. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, that did a nice job there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. And as you saw in the final version that I didn't have audio on, we made it grayscale, as most of my street photos end up being grayscale. So we'll add a black and white filter and take a look at that. And if you've watched my other videos, you know that I like to cycle through a number of these different settings here. Adele's one of my favorites. Chrome, I don't like Chrome today. Cyanotype, no. I like this deep black. Might use that. Oh, grainy film. Grainy film's okay. Actually, I think I'm going to use the deep black. That is pretty good. And let's turn it off. We can see there's a lot of blue being reflected from the sky in the windows here. And then he's got this blue cloth or whatever on the table. So I'm going to play around with the blues and try and lighten that up a little bit. We'll pull up the blue. Pull it up. And let's see if that... Yeah, that looks okay. Go into the tone. Up the brightness just a little bit. Let's pull back on the shadows. Black is good. Yeah, that is getting pretty close. So I think I want to add a little bit more detail or contrast on this sculpture still. I'm going to add another tone enhancer, and I'm going to darken this. So let's go in here, we'll add a tone enhancer, and we'll paste in our mask. Hide that, and where is it? Highlights darker, or just darker? No. Midtones darker. No, it's got to be highlights darker. Okay, and that's on and off. Okay, I kind of like that, but it's a little bit crunchy. So we're going to play around with this and reduce the effect a little bit. So let's just pull the exposure down a little bit, and then we'll add in some highlights back. Darken the shadows here. Pull the blacks. Yeah. And with tone enhancer, a lot of the work in the presets is usually done in the curves, although this one looks flat. Let's undo that. Okay, so one thing I don't like about On1 is when you do curves, if you create a point, there's no way to delete that point. You can't drag it off the screen and it's gone. You can't right click on it. You have to undo, which is fine if it's the last thing you did, but if you're coming back to revisit something, you won't be able to get rid of a point unless you delete the whole thing and start all over again. So you need to be careful about that. And why is that off? You know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull back on the opacity because I think it's a little bit too crunchy. Yeah, it's very subtle. I'm not sure if you can see that on YouTube or not, but I'm happy with that. And our last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a vignette. And as usual, I'll check subtle, strong, big softy, kind of like the big softy. I'm going to reduce the size on that a little bit. Maybe drop the opacity a little bit more. Yeah, that is pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So if you've liked this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can also find me on Instagram, Vero, and my website, seansmith.net. Links will be in the description. And just before we go, let's check out the original photo by hitting backslash. And that's our original. It's very soft, and this guy's really dark, but I'm quite happy with the final version. Thank you for watching.